I don't think I have. I think once I make a commitment to either produce or direct, I pretty much keep that promise to myself. And in the sense of producing, I have a kind of obligation to the production company that I promised to, work on the film. I'm pretty much, what makes me decide to direct, for me, is still a big unknown mystery. I still can't really tell you why something like Amistad, a clearly non-commercial movie, would grab me so passionately and would keep me interested for 2 years until it was finished, and why a movie like American Beauty, which I produced, would not compel me to direct it when Sam Mendes did a brilliant job directing it. And I don't know what the reason is. I think maybe some movies are destined to be yours, to belong to you, and some movies aren't. And my wife read American Beauty. I brought it home one night, and she said, "This is your next picture. You must direct it. It's one of the greatest scripts I have ever read, including some of the last few movies you've directed." and it didn't speak to me that way. I knew it was a good picture, but it just didn't speak to me, or it didn't speak to that part of me that needs to make that critical decision to take over the whole project. And I went and hired a complete unknown to direct it. Sam Mendes had only done stage work, had never made a movie before, but I loved his theater work so much, I thought he could do an extraordinary job, and he did. And he won the Academy Award.
There's always been an emotional quotient in every film of yours. And is emotion close to you? And what is the deciding factor? Is business more important for you, or the emotional factor in a story?
No, the emotional factor in the story always trumps
because
business.
You have been breaking the business barriers very often.
But what calls to me is not whether a film is going to make $1 gazillion. Mm-hmm. What calls to me is there a deep urge in the center of myself that only that film will release and then exorcise. And that's the only condition I'll direct a movie. If I'm doing a sequel, of course. If I'm doing The Lost World, A Secret of Jurassic Park, of course, I know that the bar's been raised, because if it doesn't make this X amount of money, everybody thinks it's a failure. And there's that added pressure of great expectation. The Indiana Jones series, they're not sequels, but on all the other 3 Indiana Jones films that I've directed, there's a tremendous level of expectation, and that's nerve-wracking. Yeah. But the fact that those movies are successful and make a lot of money isn't why I decided to direct sequels to the Indiana Jones series.
Emotion is a great factor in the films that we make here in India. Mm-hmm. And are you aware of any of our work?
I'm not as aware as I should be sitting up here, being somebody with international claim. We don't have great access to Indian films in America. We don't have, like they do in other countries, you go to any country in Europe or Asia, and you go to a hotel, and there are channels, and each channel is based on a country.
Right. And
there's movies, and there's news, and there's culture, and there's commentary from each of the different countries. We don't have that in the U.S.
Why?
Commercial reasons. If something is not deemed to be commercial or to make a connection with a demographic or a certain demographic, it's not considered to be worth putting on the air. So that's why Robert Redford did such a wonderful thing by inventing the Sundance Channel. And we also have a channel called the Independent Film Channel. These are 2 very valuable channels because we expose films from offshore, often for the first time, to an American audience. But we don't have enough of those channels. Right. And we don't have enough countries represented on American television that would give a chance for people who love movies to see the movies that come out of India.
What do you think we should be doing for a greater exposure in, say, the United States of America?
I don't think it's anything that you need to do. It's something we need to do. We need to do this for the global culture. Not just because I'm here in India talking to wonderful filmmakers, and certainly to yourself, who we all are aware of in America. But it's because, the world has shrunk to the size of a postage stamp because of the social networking. And just because of the breakthrough of the information highway. Mm-hmm. The oceans have narrowed and countries have come closer together, and cultures aren't so different when we can all share each other's art. And when that starts to happen, it's really up to the host country to find ways of streaming the art and the culture and the great ideas and the great inspiration from a country like India. So that's not really your responsibility, it's our neglect and our need to be more responsible to exposing Americans to more films from around the world.
As somebody who is so influential in Hollywood and in America, would you propagate our case for us, please? Because we do need a lot more exposure.
I have propagated your case, and I will propagate the case, and part of the relationship, the fringe benefit of this great relationship that DreamWorks is having with Reliance and Anil Ambani and Amitabh Bachchan is the fact that this is one of our goals. One of our goals is to build the cultural bridge between India and the United States.
Right, right.
We're already building the bridge right now.
Yeah. Mr. Spielberg, you have often said in some of your interviews that if you want to be remembered by some of your films, it would be E.T. and Schindler's List. Why?
Well, E.T. is the movie that when I go to different places, people talk about the most. You know, and it used to be just young people talk to me about Schindler's List, but that young demographic has really grown up, and now they're talking to me about showing Schindler's List to their children. And I'm getting so old, grandparents are telling me stories about their grandkids seeing not Schindler's List, but E.T. for the first time. So that's the film that people talk about the most when I travel. And the other film that people talk about the most when I travel around is Schindler's List.
Right. Is that just that reason, or was there something else behind?
Well, E.T. was the film that got me to want to be a dad for the first time. I was a bachelor and I had no children, and I worked with Drew Barrymore and Robert McNaughton and Henry Thomas, who played Gertie and, you know, and the three kids. And by the end of E.T., I did not want to leave those kids with their parents. I just wanted to take those kids home with me and raise them. And I just simply realized that the entire E.T. was about my own search for, I guess, the parent in me. It was a healing movie because my mom and dad got divorced, and essentially E.T. is about an American family and a divorce and its impact on children. And I was working on a script about an American divorce when I got the idea to do the alien being stranded on Earth, and I combined both concepts. So in a sense, that movie was, at that time, in 1982, the most personal thing I had ever done, and it led 3 years later to my having my first child.
Right. You have many children now,
I have
grandchildren.
seven now, and 3 grandchildren.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they see your films?
They do. They don't like all of them. Because there's a you know, we used to joke about this when I was growing up. In the 60s, we used to scream at anybody over 30 years old that there was a generation gap and you don't understand us. And my kids are now throwing that right back at me.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because they tell you the truth. They really tell me the truth.
Which are the ones that they like the best?
I think the movie that my kids like, it depends because they like different movies at different times as they grow up. But the movie that they always talk about is E.T. I just have to say, that's the one that and Indiana Jones, the entire series, they like that the best, except they don't like the last one I made so much.
You've been making films at a time when there have been many contemporaries of yours, Coppola,
George Lucas, Scorsese,
Brian De Palma.
Right, Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese. Did you ever build relationships with them to discuss the future of cinema or what you were doing? Or was there envy in what the other person was doing?
Yes, there's always envy. Envy is a good thing. You can't rise to any great height without not just envy, but it's because envy might be the wrong word. It's more jealousy and ambition and wanting to do better than those guys. And they all felt that way. We all felt that way about each other. But in trying to inspire each other and outdo each other. We worked together and collaborated with each other to make our films better. My movies are better for having Francis, George, and Marty and Brian in my life. And I think some of their films are too.
Was there ever a time where you felt that perhaps if you had directed one of the films that you saw of your contemporaries, you would have done a better job?
No, I really don't think so. I mean, nobody but George could have done Star Wars. Nobody.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. Well, would you have done a Star Wars?
No, no. I would never have done them because my space movies are about. I don't want to go all the way out there to find aliens. I want them to come to Earth. It's much more convenient. I want them landing in my backyard. I don't want to have to lift a finger. You know, George likes to go, you know, millions of light years out there. You know, he loves that. He loves, what is that, far, far away, the galaxy far, far away. So that wouldn't have been in my wheelhouse. And arguably, but for me, one of the greatest movies ever made in the history of cinema is the first Godfather. Nobody could have done Godfather 1 and 2 like Francis. No one. Yeah. Marty, George, all the original group that grew up together, none of us could have done that the way Francis did.
So, Mr. Spielberg, welcome to India.
Thank you.
Welcome to Bombay again.
Welcome back to India.
Welcome back after 30 years, right?
30 years, yes.
So, what has your experience here been like? I mean, this fabulous evening, it's been great to have you here.
Well, this evening's been worth the whole coming over. It really has. I mean, it's been a whirlwind trip. And we did media all day today, which was a lot of fun. Really great questions. And then tonight to be received so warmly by the entire community of filmmakers, directors, and writers. This was a great house, and I had the best time talking to everybody.
And what are your expectations from this? I mean, what are you looking forward to the most?
I need to be properly exposed to the current cinema here in India. And I need to really be able to do more homework, so to speak. Learn who all the filmmakers are and try to search for multiple genres, not just the one Bollywood kind of style of filmmaking, but personal movies that filmmakers and writers are creating that show different complexions of India, different stories about personal lives, or it doesn't have to be a little quirky small movie. It can be a big adventure film, but something that shows the imprint of the filmmaker's sensibilities, taste, and skill. And so I need to see a lot of movies, and I need my countrymen and my own industry to be more aware of the films being made here.
So what are you taking back with you? How are you going to go about that? Just off the top of your head, I mean, right after all of this.
Well, right after all this, I'm going to go back with great memories, number one. And then I'm going to see what we can do proactively to inspire more of a cultural exchange and more of, even if it's just a one-way street of more Indian films coming to America, finding some place to show them. Maybe not movie theaters right away, but television.
Well, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Mr. Bachchan, what was your experience with this in conversation with Steven Spielberg?
Much the same as this wonderful audience here. Very invigorating, very frank, very open, and as Mr. Ambani said, a lot of candor, and he felt very comfortable. That's always a wonderful feeling. But just the fact to be, having Mr. Steven Spielberg here in India and being in conversation with him on the same floor is just an incredible experience. It's an evening that I think many of us will remember for a very long time.
Well, I think part of it's also because you were in conversation with him and made him really comfortable as well.
I think that people from the same profession sometimes have this ability to be able to, talk shop, and this was one such occasion. I think all of us were on the same plane. We understood the feelings, the language, some of the moments that he described, everything to do with cinema. That's always a wonderful feeling to be able to see your own profession from another person's point of view and not just an ordinary person, a genius such as Steven Spielberg.
Well, a lot of people, I've heard this from a lot of people around you, feel a lot of awe and feel this great aura that you have. Do you feel that with him? I mean, is this someone that you feel?
I don't know, where this is coming from, but there is no aura at all as far as I'm concerned. But yes, when you meet somebody like Mr. Spielberg, yes, you do recognize the quality of work that he's put in, and you feel, very dwarfed in his presence.